Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Range Project. This is Chris McGrory here, currently a senior on the baseball team at Harvard, with another episode. In these conversations, I'm trying to learn from those around me at a place I still can't believe I go to school at. My goal is to uncover what my amazing guests do and how they do it. That means getting the tools, tactics, and routines they use, plus the mental frameworks they have, so you and I can apply them in our own lives. Okay, today we have an awesome episode for you with the one and only Edwin Awolo. Now, Edwin does it all. Edwin played with me on the Harvard baseball team, where he was a walk-on, studied pre-med neurobiology at school, and is now a first-year medical student at Duke. And as an undergrad, he volunteered at Boston Children's Hospital, plus began his ongoing mentorship roles for younger students. In between graduation and med school, he worked at Stamford Hospital in Connecticut, where he was a technician in the emergency department during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. And he saw some things, which we'll get into. The son of Nigerian and Filipino immigrants, Edwin has a unique lens on life and carries the lessons they learned from the challenging road to America with him today, helping him set goals and tackle the obstacles in his way. Now, fair warning, this is a wide-ranging conversation. You'll get his study and productivity tips, self-care routines, lessons learned from working in the emergency room and from his father, his thoughts on being black in predominantly and historically white spaces, and a lot more. Now, the thread through it all is his mindset, a blend of immense gratitude for every day, plus the attitude that nobody ever said life was going to be easy. So with that said, I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did with Edwin Awolo. 1, 2, 3, do it! Edwin, how you doing?
Chris, it's good, my man. It's been too long. How are you?
It really has. I'm good. And I see you're back at home, not in Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Where are you calling from?
Where am I calling from? Norwalk, Connecticut.
Gotcha.
A little colder than Durham, North Carolina, but it's good to be back home always.
Yeah, I'm looking out at about a foot of snow. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's probably about half of that, but there's a hefty amount of white stuff on the ground.
Gotcha. Well, I'm thinking we get right into it.
Let's go deep.
So when I think of you, I think of the perfect Ivy League student. And so did 7 of the 8 Ivy schools that accepted you.
Oh, man.
Dude, you're dedicated, high achieving in the classroom, athletic, musical, personable, you have a unique home background, etc. I could go on and on. So I'm thinking we bounce around those different identities. Is that cool with you?
That's a great place to start. Let's do it.
Beautiful. So tell me, I kind of know some of the details, but help me understand, how did you end up playing the national anthem on the violin at Fenway Park?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to go way, way back, I mean, it started with me learning how to play the violin. So I started, I believe it was 2nd grade was when I started. And it was something that my sister did. And then it just so happened that I also picked it up. And then, I played pretty competitively, like all the way up till when I graduated in high school. And didn't really have that much time to play when I was over at Harvard.
This was something I didn't even know you had in the toolbox. I didn't even know you played the violin.
You didn't know I had that in my bag, yeah.
No,
I didn't really bring it out that much when I was in college. But yeah, I mean, I studied privately for years, man. Like my violin teacher was essentially part of my family. It was kind of weird. Like my last lesson, it was like, wow, this dude saw me like grow up essentially. Right? But yeah, violin was like a staple of my childhood and like my identity growing up. And yeah, so I approached Coach D, and I was like, yeah, I would really like to play the national anthem for senior day. And he was all about it. He was on board. And then didn't really tell any of you guys because I wanted to surprise y'all.
It was the biggest surprise.
And then yeah, it just happened. And then a few weeks later, the Sox reached out, just made it happen. It was a pretty surreal experience.
Yeah, I mean, a beautiful sunny day. How did it feel? Were you nervous walking up to the microphone at Fenway?
There's always jitters. But once you start playing and you can feel like the crowd is into it, like they're rooting for you. You can feel the energy. You can feel like the crowd is like on your side. And it's like when you have that support, it's just like,
yeah, you have 30,000 people. Like they want it to sound good.
They want it to sound good. Yeah, you're gonna deliver. It's the same thing as when I played for us over on Joey O. Like
right.
It was the same thing. Even from like the Columbia side, I knew they wanted me to sound good too.
Right. Yeah.
And I knew everyone was into it, so that just kind of drives me to want to perform.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
And we'll link to clips of that in the show notes. I mean, I thought it was so cool to surprise the team and all the fans. I remember my parents after the game, they were like, all right, the game was good, but Edwin was better. So you had a lot of love from the McGrory family. So I'd like to go a little deeper on the music. So you were super dedicated as a kid. Was it like a passion, or was it something that you felt you needed to do, or was there external pressure?
I mean, when it comes to instruments and stuff, there's like, it's like give and take. Because when it comes to kids like really like, they'll want to do something like at the very start of it, but yes. Then to like prolong that I guess enthusiasm, you kind of need some external pressure. So I would say my parents, my dad especially, like, I mean, playing violin was something like he brought up, and he was like, you're going to do this. And I'm like, all right. And so they provided like the resources for me to like explore that interest and also get better. I mean, like one thing, a lot of my like fellow classmates, when we were growing up, going through the school system, they'd be playing and be like, oh my God, like, I just want to stop because I'm like so bad. And everyone was bad at a certain point.
Right.
It's a craft that you need to like get better at. Like you need to put in work to get better at it. You can't just stop and say, oh, I'm so bad. Of course you're going to be bad until you put in those hours. It's not like a talent. There is some talent to it, but it's also like those hours that you put in that people don't see.
So what did those look like growing up?
Oh, I mean, like I would get up, and I was up early as a kid. So I would be up around like 6 or 6:30, put in like 30 minutes of playing, maybe less, maybe like 15 to 30 minutes. And then also do some exercise. And then
as a kid,
head over to school. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. That was my morning routine as a kid. So I was always kind of like a morning
You know what
person.
My morning routine was when I was a kid?
Let me hear it.
When I was waiting for the bus after breakfast, I would play at least 1, 2, or 3 songs on Guitar Hero. So you could say I was working on my craft.
You're trying to master your craft, I see.
Right? Yeah. One of those paid off. One of those was a meaningless activity. So you mentioned your dad. Are your mom or dad musical, or was it really your sister who inspired you to pick up the violin?
So neither of my parents are like super musical. I mean, music has always been like part of my household, but once again, it was kind of like my dad who was like, all right, my sister's going to play violin. And then naturally, like, I'm also going to play violin.
Gotcha. And how have you continued that passion for music after high school? I mean, I knew you from every spring break, Edwin would make a mixtape.
Yes, sir.
And so there's that. Was that your main outlet for music?
Yeah, I would say during undergrad, that was definitely my main outlet in terms of music, because I wasn't really playing the violin like I was before. But I was always up to something like that. Like I made some like rap songs when I was in high school as well. But it was all for jokes.
That's underground.
Right?
I haven't heard those.
Yeah, those are super underground. Those are like hidden files. But yeah, it's always just been kind of part of what I've done. And then like freshman year, it was me and our teammate PJ, winter break, like that period of time when it was just the athletes on campus that week before classes started. We just said, hey, let's make a mixtape, and we called it Dirty Snow. It's it's one of the classics.
It really
and
is.
It was at first it was just a joke. We were just kind of yelling into our Macs because we didn't even have like a speakers like a microphone set up, so we're just having fun with it. And then we finally bought a mic and we're like, hey, let's kind of take this seriously. And so it started with like VVS was our first real track. And then
these are anthems in the Harvard baseball locker rooms.
Yeah. We can link the SoundCloud below.
We can totally do that.
But yeah, then it kind of just took off from there. And it's just a fun hobby. One of my favorite memories from Harvard was just creating music. And there's a different type of synergy, especially when you create something like from the ground up, and then you also get to see people enjoy it. That's the big payoff. Right.
You don't get that in sports. There's more hours there's just as many hours put in, but you don't have that tangible final product. It kind of evaporates.
Yeah. I guess it's a different type of end product you get with sports, but music is something anyone can enjoy at any time, and you can kind of just bring it out, which is nice.
You also brought out a guitar and your voice over quarantine. I was thumbing through your Instagram, and I remember seeing them, and so I rewatched them. And dude, you have a voice, and you have the right hand on the guitar on the plucking.
Yeah.
Did you teach yourself that, or did you always have that in your back pocket?
No, so this is not something that I always had in my back pocket. So I had this guitar laying around in my house for a while, and I kind of passively tried to learn, but wasn't really putting in the time. And then during my gap year last year, I had time to like really spend playing guitar. So I'd like wake up, play a little bit habitually. And then I really do like guitar because you can just pick it up. It's easy to pick up, and then you can just sing along with it. And I love singing. So I just kind of picked that up, learned it on my own. Definitely playing a stringed instrument before helps a ton.
Yeah, the transition from violin to guitar is probably pretty natural.
Yeah, it felt pretty good.
Well, that was, like I said, a big part of you that I didn't really know that you had that experience from high school. I knew you as the guy who made the rap song. I feel like every team has a guy who makes the rap song. That's a role on every team. But like I said, I didn't know this whole different side of you, really. But one thing that I did know was your pre-med and now onto med school grind. Mm-hmm. That was obviously, that took up just as much time, probably more than any other commitment that you had. And I'm not going to lie, I was always a little envious of those on the pre-med track because it's a straightforward path, the steps to get there. But then it not so much once I saw you and Devin Peterson running from class to practice to lab, missing dinner. That was not about it. So why did you pick this path that in a lot of ways it really sucks? It's hard. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of barriers to overcome. Why go down the path of medicine?
Yeah. So I can give you like the PC answer. I can give you like the real answer. So if you know anything about like Nigerian households, you know that when you grow up, you're going to be either a doctor or a lawyer. Right?
Is that right? Okay. Say more.
So that's pretty much like the traditional path. So when I was on my med school interviews, I had to come up with like a more marketable answer, I would say. But that's like from a very base perspective, that's like how medicine got introduced into my life.
Sure. Right. Say it how it is.
That's just how it is. But over time, I did realize like this is like really what I want to do, in terms that I couldn't like, I was in school, I was in class, I was interacting with people, a lot of us end up going to like banking, consulting, working for like nonprofits and stuff like that. And like none of that stuff really made me like, I wasn't hungry to do any of that stuff. And then over the course of my time in undergrad, I got chances to shadow doctors, got chances to like volunteer. I volunteered at Boston Children's Hospital and got to see that side of things, patient care. And that stuff really ignited my passions to want to go into medicine. And honestly, you don't really know like the full extent of medicine until like you like get into that realm. Like I still have a pretty rudimentary knowledge about like medicine, you know. I guess my biggest exposure came after my undergrad time when I was working in the emergency department over at Stanford Hospital, pretty close to my house. And it was over the course of 7 months. And I even like got to work during like the height of the pandemic. And that was when I just saw medicine like in its like rawest form, you know?
Right.
And as of course, like someone comes in, they have a problem and you do your best to try to like diagnose it and like get that person on their way in better shape. And yeah, I can't really think of another profession in which, you know, it blends a lot of things. There's compassion, there's science at its core. I mean, doctors are scientists. And really, I mean, it's once again, like anything, like violin, like anything like worth working for, like it's a craft, you know, and you're always working to improve the way healthcare is being delivered, the way that you care for your patients, different procedures. And I love it. I mean, I really love the procedural aspect of it. I want to be a surgeon one day. And yeah, I mean, that's a long-winded answer, but
no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're lucky in that I feel like a lot of people get pigeonholed into what their parents do or what their parents tell them to do, what one teacher along the line says, oh, you're good at this. But just because you're good at something doesn't mean that that's the right path for you. So
mm-hmm.
I'm excited that your talent also meets your passion, which is great. That's the type of doctor I would want operating on me. And you mentioned like that compassion piece. I don't know. I think you're learning the hard science in school, but I don't know if that compassion piece gets taught. And that is the difference maker for me when I have a great experience with a doctor or one who I'm never going to see again.
Absolutely. That's definitely a big piece of healthcare. And I think it can get overlooked. I think curriculums now in medical school are trying to like address that and make sure the future doctors that they're training are more humanistic and that they can like really connect with their patients and establish that connection. And some people have it and some people need to work on it, you know, but that's definitely a big factor and a big reason why I want to become a doctor, because at the end of the day, you're interacting with people and it's like a dynamic relationship and you can exert like a profound influence on someone else's life, which makes work meaningful to me.
Right. So with that in the back of your mind, or I guess a better question would be, do you have that in the back of your mind on those days that just suck? You're running from practice to lab. And so what did you tell yourself on those days that were just really, really tough grinds?
Yeah. I mean, my dad always says this. He says life's a battle, you know. No one said it was going to be easy. I mean, I had those moments during this semester. I caught myself kind of towards the tail end of my first semester of medical school, kind of being like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I got to do all this learning. Like I kind of just wanted to like chill. I just want to chill out. You know, I was tired. And then I was like, the energy that I'm spending complaining right now could go somewhere else. And I kind of just need to like do what I need to do. No one said it was going to be easy. I will be tired. I need to get used to it, but I need to just grind and like try to always have that like picture in the back of my head, like the big picture that like, this is what I'm working towards. While I'm working through the weeds, it's going to be tough. There's going to be days that I don't want to do anything, but at the end, like, this is what I want to accomplish. And like, this is just the path I need to take to get to it. And I just have to put all my energy into it, you know?
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, especially, I'll say selfishly, for somebody who might not have as crystal clear a vision of the future. Mm-hmm. Creating something, I think, is always motivating, whether it's a list of goals for baseball or even just something as simple as a to-do list. Just having that vision of the future, I think, is really energizing and can keep you dedicated on the path.
Yeah, I agree. On that note of lists, there's definitely like one thing I try to incorporate into my lifestyle. Starting undergrad, it's just like creating lists. And there's those long-term goals that I have that I'll write down, but then there's also shorter term goals, and like short term and like I'll make a list for like the day in terms of what I want to do. And the first thing on my list all the time is just to wake up, because that's not given, so
Absolutely, no doubt.
once I wake up, that's an accomplishment. And then I'll just like rattle off a few more things that I have for the day. And sometimes, most of the times I don't get through all of them, but as long as I'm able to get through some of them, then that's a win in my book.
Can we double click on that? So you set your long-term goals. What does that look like? Are you pen and paper on a journal every month, every quarter, once a year, New Year's? What does that look like for the long-term goals?
I would say my long-term goals, I establish them kind of like at the beginning before I like embark on something. So like before I started medical school, I have my goals that I set out for what I want to do. And then like I'll check back up on them periodically and see like, where am I at?
It's like different chapters of your life you need to create a vision for the end.
Yeah. And it's surprising though, because you'll go through it and goals change, so it's cool to see the growth that you go through. And I'm pretty sure like my goals will adapt. They will change. They might not look the same, but it's nice to look back and see like where you're going and what progress you've made.
Have you had that all throughout your life, setting goals? I want to be first chair in the orchestra. I want to be MVP of the league. I want to be accepted by Harvard. Or was this something that you developed later on?
I would say like I've made like mental notes and like mental goals for myself, but trying to like hold myself a little more accountable by writing them down is something that I've adopted later on. And really, lists and like goals are really good for like the day to day, because it just like helps me keep track of a bunch of things, because there can be like a million different things going on. But once you like the satisfaction you get from like crossing something off your list is good.
Yeah, our brain really does crave that little dopamine hit.
Yeah.
When you hit the checkbox, it's addicting. It's absolutely addicting. So, okay, you have your big goals. Those are kind of in the background, on the back burner. You have your daily goals, hopefully working towards daily checklist, hopefully working towards those. On the topic of fine-grained detail of your life, when you're studying, how do you lock in and be ultra productive in the little limited time you had as a student athlete? I mean, you were put to the test.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's prioritizing things. You assume that I'm always super productive. Sometimes it doesn't come easily, but I think one of the great things about being a student athlete, especially at a place like Harvard, is that like you're primarily a student first, and it's not like other institutions that may prioritize the athlete piece more than the student piece. Like at Harvard, I felt like we were students that just so happened to also play a sport. So there wasn't necessarily like any special treatment given to the student athletes. So it was kind of like having two jobs, like you had to get after it in the classroom, but also get after it when you cross the bridge over to the river, cross over the bridge over to like the athletic facility. And like that definitely helps. I mean, now I'm just a student, I'm just a student. But before, when I was a student athlete, that definitely puts like more pressure on you to like get stuff done with like that limited amount of time that you have. Like, okay, I need to get this done. Whereas like now it's like, okay, I have a whole day, like I can structure it the way I want to, and I have more freedom. Whereas before it was like, okay, I need to get stuff done. I need to lock in. So there's like no choice. You couldn't flounder around and waste time.
Which do you like better? Did you like the time crunch of undergrad, or are you finding yourself, you like the freedom and the
flexibility of being in med school?
I mean, there's pros and cons of both, but having freedom is great. I can wake up when I want to. I'm still like an early morning person, so I'll be up pretty early, but I have autonomy to say, okay, this is what I need to do. And especially in like medical school, most of my classes, all my classes pretty much except anatomy, are online, right? And so some people are live lecture goers. I was like a live lecture goer when I was an undergrad, but that's completely changed now. It's like,
oh, really?
Yeah. So lectures will be recorded, and then I can kind of structure my day the way I want to, and then like watch the lectures later at like 2 or 3 times speed and just like get through them quickly to be more efficient. So that aspect of it, I do like, in that I can kind of do what I want when I want outside of any mandatory events. So you can really customize like the way you want to learn.
Is that something you mentioned the word efficiency? Mm-hmm. Is that something you strive for? Is that necessary, or is that something that you specifically strive for in your days?
Yeah, I mean, I really do strive to be efficient in my days. I don't really like to waste too much time, especially like medical school, because I thought I was able to like learn a lot in undergrad, but like once you get into medical school, like the amount of stuff that you learn in a week is crazy.
That might was that one of your viral tweets? You said something like,
it was something like that. It was like 1 second you think you're like doing fine, and then the next second you're just drowning in like all this information. Like this past semester, we learned about the human anatomy, the complete human anatomy, all the muscles, bones, nerves, all that stuff, and also like the physiology, the way the body works. And we covered that in a semester that was like around, we started in August, and we just wrapped up, and we went through all that stuff. And at Duke, we do that. We do like all of the classroom didactic material, all the stuff you need to learn before you go and do rotations in the hospital. We do that in 1 year. Whereas
everything.
Yeah, we learn everything that we need to know.
Oh, gotcha. Like, okay, keep going.
Yeah, so that includes anatomy and physiology, which we just wrapped up. And then that's pharmacology, so knowing all the drugs. So whenever those like by the end of this year, when I see those drug commercials, like I'll know exactly what they're talking about. So all the drugs, pharmacology, pathology, just like all the diseases known to man, like we're going to learn that next semester.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, so you need to be efficient in order to really get through all that material. It's like kind of a funny thing. They talk about high yield and low yield information, right? And so you always want to like maximize on that high yield info. And
no doubt.
And the low yield stuff is it's like fake news. That's pretty much not fake news, but like you really want to hone in on that high yield info and make the most of it, because there's only so many hours in a day and you need to be competent.
Gotcha. And how do you structure those studying hours? Are you, all right, I'm going to sit down and lock in for 4 hours, or are you going to spread it out in little chunks? What works best for you?
Yeah. So I can get distracted pretty easily. So, the best thing for me, it's called like the Pomodoro Technique. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but yeah, it's
30 on, 5 off.
Something like that. For me, I keep the interval like 25 minutes on and then 5 minutes off. So kind of like really can concentrate and then leave that 5 minutes for me to reset and then get back after it.
Have you ever tried using, I see you have your Bose headphones on. Have you ever had like background music, just no lyrics, for those 25-minute intervals?
It depends what I'm doing. It depends the nature of the task. If I really need to focus, then I got to go silent. But if it's kind of like mindless work, then I can listen to something.
Probably not a lot of that in med school, but yeah, there's some playlists out there. I might shoot you and link in the show notes for those that are interested in the Pomodoro method. And it actually hasn't worked for me. I've tried, and 30 minutes isn't long enough for me to get in a groove. I found I'm much more productive if I go like an hour or an hour and a half on, and then I see my attention waning, and then take a break, then dial back in. But
yeah,
like I said, we'll put links to all of that, those goodies in the show notes. And so you've told me Duke works on like a 2-week schedule. You're getting tested every 2 weeks, which, I mean, I don't know if I've ever had that type of classroom situation. So I'd imagine that creates an environment that can be stressful. And I'm wondering, what do you do for self-care when you might find yourself feeling a little on edge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's definitely a good question. The 2 week schedule is nice because you do have that off weekend when you don't have anything going on. But then that weekend before the test, that week leading up to the test is always a stressful one. So what stuff do I do to kind of de-stress and keep myself grounded? I always try to prioritize my health. So, this semester I didn't really make any sacrifices in terms of sleep. On any given night, I'll get around like 6 to 7 hours of sleep, which is enough for me. I always want to shoot for 8, but that's just not always possible. But definitely prioritizing that, not skipping out on meals. I always make sure that I have food to eat. I know you see my Instagram story, so I'm always in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, always
chefing
cooking up something, and then maybe Friday night there's a little steak, a little vino. You're treating yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I try not to like make any cuts to my lifestyle just because like stuff is like hitting the fan, right? So making sure that I keep my like routine steady even throughout the stress. And I feel like the most stress that I feel is when there's like just a ton of stuff that I need to like get done, right? And oftentimes when you have so many things to do, like you'll just kind of sit there and be like, wow, I have so much stuff to do, instead of like saying, okay, there's one thing, like, let me get that done. And then that's something you can cross off and like move to the next one. So trying to not be stagnant, trying not to be static, and always trying to be moving in some sort of direction.
Gotcha.
Is something that I try to do.
Are you were a grinder in the weight room. Are you still keeping up with your workouts?
Yeah. So, it's tough now because of the whole COVID situation. Thinking about how like my experience would be a lot different without COVID is kind of crazy, but still trying to stay on top of my health in that regard. So still getting out there running, doing push-ups. Haven't really been able to go to the gym that much just because of COVID restrictions. But when they do open back up, then you'll see me back in the gym. Definitely.
Good stuff.
Definitely miss getting after it in the weight room with the boys though.
Those are always fun. Fun. And last piece on this med school identity, this past year in your gap year, you found yourself in a situation you probably didn't anticipate. You tell me what you signed up for and then how that experience changed due to COVID.
Yeah. So, my role was an emergency department technician. So coming out of undergrad, something that I lacked was like real, like long-term exposure to like healthcare. Like I've seen glimpses, like I volunteered, but you're only like there for like 4 hours a week, right? So how much can you really see? So one thing I wanted to get out of my gap year was experience in the healthcare field. So what I did was get my EMT certification over the summer. So I took an accelerated class. Quick shout out to the EMS Institute of Fairfield County, taught by Shonda Broadnack. She's a great woman. Love that woman. But yeah, so I took that class over the summer and then applied for the job. And I started working around like Halloween time. And yeah, so I was ED tech. So what does that entail? So I'm pretty much like the first person that you'd see once you get to the emergency department. So I would get your vital signs, sometimes triage if I'm like out in the lobby, which is like assigning priority patients, like determining whether like they're high priority or like kind of low-ish priority. So vital signs, I do blood draws, get the rooms ready for the patients. Interact with the nurses and doctors and see what they needed. And then everything in between, honestly. There's a lot of other stuff that I can't necessarily go into great detail, but the techs do a lot and you definitely skill a lot. So, that's what I signed up for. So I wanted to just get hands-on experience and see like how healthcare works and see like how you work up a patient and what goes into that. And then, yeah, once COVID hit, that was real, man. It was crazy because COVID, we didn't really know what was going on with COVID for a while.
Right.
And I don't know if we still like have a grip on completely what's going on with COVID, but yeah, it was crazy to really see because the hospital system got hit hard. So our ICUs are full. We're converting parts of the hospital into like COVID only areas. I mean, it was a pretty stressful time. When I think of the months of like February to pretty much like April, like it was kind of a blur. My hours were 13-hour shifts, 3 days a week. So 36 hours in total, but like it would be kind of like nonstop for that whole 13 hours just because we're just getting slammed with COVID patient after COVID patient. And yeah, it was crazy. I mean, like, like just the way things work changed, you know, like N95 masks. You'd use an N95 before, for example, if a patient had like tuberculosis or something,
right.
You slap on an N95 and then you just toss it. Like,
right.
That was it. But but after like those N95s are like gold.
Literally.
Know? Yeah.
Wow. Do you have a story that kind of paints a picture of just how crazy this role was as a technician during COVID times?
Let me think. I mean, I can't think of like definitively like one story that I can recall off the top of my head. It was just like a constant state of like, there was always something going on, you know? And as a tech, mainly like the role was trying to like maximize like ways you can help other people, like facilitate their roles, asking the doctor what they needed, asking the nurse what they needed, and just being a member of that team and getting stuff done. I mean, because healthcare really is a team. It's like a team. It's like a team sport, really, and it's all for the betterment of the patient. You know,
that's awesome to have that in mind and then have that experience. Now, shifting to, I'm going to combine a few of your identities we haven't touched on. Your physical identity, known as Dat Blasian Kid on Instagram, and then also your life in baseball. So I know you mentioned your dad is from Nigeria. Your mother is from the Philippines. Do I have that right?
Yep.
So I know your parents as super fans of Harvard baseball, and your dad as the loudest member of the crowd. Could you share a few quotes that he would like to scream from the grandstands?
Yeah, I mean, so there's the iconic slap the ball hard, you know.
Yep.
Always slap the ball hard. Slap it hard.
In a fairly, I wouldn't say a thick Nigerian accent, but he had a very distinctive voice.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely foreign. So there was a slap it very hard, referring to the ball.
Yes.
Just to clear that up for the folks at home. Let's see. Slap it very hard. Life is a battle. Never say die. I mean, these are things you can apply in your life, man. I think about it from
Were
time
these
to time.
things that he said in the home growing up?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, say more about that.
Oh, I mean, my dad's like the biggest cheerleader, man. It's not only baseball, like it's also just life. And I feel like you can apply like a lot of what he says to real life. I mean, there's a lot of things you can learn from baseball that do apply to real life, you know? So, I mean, life is a battle. I think about that all the time. My dad also says that to me all the time as well. So that's kind of ingrained in my life. It's a battle, never say die, slap it very hard.
I mean, the combination of life is a battle and then never say die, that can get you through some tough times.
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
And if you're feeling down, if you have that in the back of your mind, life is a battle is it fair to say that's kind of, it's more than just a quote. It's almost like a framework for looking at situations that are presented to you. Is that right?
Yeah. It's kind of like a way of life, you know, like we have these big battles that we face. I mean, everyone has their battles, right? And there's also like the little battles we face. I mean, getting up every morning, that can be a battle. And once you conquer that, then there's always going to be battles. You know, if you don't have battles in your life, then like I don't think you're pushing yourself, you know? Yeah. It is definitely a framework for how you look at life and how you go about things. It's also like saying like, hey, life's not going to be easy and it's going to be tough. I know it's cliche, like you're going to get knocked down. It's like how you get up, but that's life. It's not going to be easy. Life is not pretty. I mean, that's definitely something I learned like in the ED, like life can be a pain in the butt, really. And like there can be things that pop up. Like, you don't know what's going to happen on day to day, and definitely in the emergency department, like you never know what's going to like come through those doors. So sometimes you're not going to be ready, but you need to like adapt, you know?
And going back to that point about your time as a technician, tell me if you can share or not, were you close to individuals who didn't make it, who came in and passed on?
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I did like experience in the ED was death. Like, I've never really had any run-ins with death. And that's definitely something that you're exposed to in the emergency department. And because of the nature of like how things work in the emergency department, you're never really like with your patients for such a long period of time, because they'll either go home or they're sent upstairs and they're admitted to the hospital.
Right.
But you see death, and sometimes someone can come in healthy and then they can pass. Well, not necessarily coming in healthy, but can come in like seemingly normal and like pass. And then you also see people that come in right off the ambulance and they're in dire need of care, and do our best to bring them back. But sometimes, I mean, life happens, you know. I mean, definitely working in the emergency department like showed me how like fragile life is, and how like life can completely change for someone like very quickly, and really made me appreciate like having my health, because that's not a given thing. Things can kind of just go south pretty quickly. I mean, we saw this a lot happen like this year, just in general. We've lost so many people this year.
And I picked up on it. You mentioned the first thing on your to-do list is waking up, because that's not a given. Was that inspired by this experience, or was that something that you've always had in the back of your mind? Not in a morbid sense of death lurking, but just saying, kind of flipping it on its head and saying, no, I'm appreciative of this day. I'm going to attack this day because it's not a given.
No, absolutely. I would say it's like a mixture of both of those, you know, kind of like knowing that like death is a part of life, you know, and that's always going to be there. I mean, definitely like working in the emergency department, like made me like appreciate those around me that I love, especially my family, also my friends. Cause I mean, like things are not guaranteed, and I don't know, like things could happen. So saying goodbye to someone that could be like the last time that you see them. So just being cognizant of that.
Yeah. And I try and keep that in mind every time, especially talking with folks I don't see that often, is like, this might be my last interaction. This might be their last impression. I don't want to have any regrets. I'm going to be impeccable with my word when I'm connecting with this person. And on another note, I think throughout history, we had to face death more intimately with taking care of the elderly, or just working, whether it's on a farm. You just see the life cycle of animals is a lot shorter. And I feel like we're a little bit removed. That's kind of just, okay, that happens in the hospital, and then the real world is out here. And I don't know, I feel like we might be missing something with there being that kind of wall between us and death.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, people don't really like to talk about death, you know, but it's something that's inherent to like our being as individuals. And I don't think it's something that you should necessarily be like afraid of, you know. It's just a part of life. Like, life is a cycle. So, yeah.
Well, maybe on a lighter note, and I don't think that was that was not in a morbid sense. That was more of, okay, let's have a great day, because it's not a given.
It's not a given, yeah.
I think we can say, on a lighter note, going back to your parents, just seeing them, how much they supported you at Harvard baseball games. They are littered on your Instagram. They've been at every single big life event, and they have a unique background, very different from probably those at Harvard, and especially on the baseball team. If at all, how did their unique backgrounds shape your upbringing at home?
Yeah, I mean, I think their backgrounds kind of like influenced like me completely as a person. You know, they didn't come from very privileged backgrounds. So like a big thing in raising me was that they didn't want my life to be as hard as theirs, right? So they worked very hard to like raise me right so that I can go on and do great things and then like provide for my family, because once again, it's like a cycle, but they didn't want me to ever struggle the way they did. And I mean, I can't like detail everything that like happened in their lives, but it was definitely like, yeah, you have to struggle. Like definitely like, I understand why my dad says like life is a battle, because like they both gone through like a lot of things to get to this country. I mean, like just to become like an American citizen is a tough task, And so, I mean, they've like instilled values in me to like really be appreciative and like take advantage of like the opportunities that I have here. Yeah, no, shout out to them completely.
I mean, whatever they did worked. So I hope you were taking notes.
Yeah, me too.
For little Edwin Jr. No, but I'm thinking you and I have very different experiences. What has your experience been like being a Black man in these predominantly white spaces historically and currently? You're on a baseball team full of white kids, Harvard, now on to med school.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about that? Or is that even in your consciousness? Is that something you keep in mind?
I mean, it's something you definitely always notice and you're always cognizant about. You try not to make that like the forefront of like the way you think, but it's like kind of just like the institutions themselves. Like all these institutions are predominantly white. You talk about baseball, that's predominantly white. Medicine, still predominantly white. And though we're trying to like change things there. Going to Harvard, it's also a PWI. So it's definitely there. I mean, you'll inevitably like you hear things said sometimes and you're kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah. You raise an eyebrow.
You raise an eyebrow. Sometimes there's battles that you want to fight. And then there's sometimes you hear things and you kind of just let them slide,
Which is crazy because those are decisions I don't have to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess hopefully out of these conversations, I'll selfishly just recognize those little bits and pieces of how privileged my upbringing was in things that were 100% out of my control.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I mean, a lot of these things, I mean, it very much is like it is what it is type of situation. And that like, there's not really much that you can do, it kind of is the way it is. And you kind of just have to like keep an open ear and an open mind and kind of roll with it. And sometimes there are times you can interject, but other times you just kind of have to be attentive and see how people are thinking. And then like, make sure you stay true to yourself and value yourself, I would say.
No, that's tough because you mentioned there is only so much in your control, but I can only imagine when you hear something or see something, there's got to be a visceral reaction to say what's on your mind.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I can give you an example right now. This is when I was trying to get recruited to Harvard for baseball. So, going to camps and stuff.
Right.
And so, I'm biracial. I have my dad who's Nigerian and my mom is Filipino. And so, like parents are just always like talking during these showcases and stuff. And this guy is talking with my dad and my mom. And then he's like, the reason why like your son's like doing so well in school. And he was like, it's because of your mom, like your wife. And like, that's just blatantly racist. Like,
that
can you
believe
like, and this guy thought he was just like
making conversation.
And he like just said that like straight up to my dad's face. I mean, like, what do you want my dad to do? Like to like erupt? I mean, he's not going to do that. He just let it slide. And
punch him in the nose.
Right. That's what he wanted to do, but you can't do that either.
Absolutely.
But I mean, this is type of stuff. And I bet that dude didn't even like think that dude didn't even like bat an eye, like the statement that he made, which was just like obscenely racist. But like, that's the way people think, and it's unfortunate, but there's really not so much you can do about that. And when you talk about locus of control, it's like kind of just giving back to those that look like you and trying to make those spaces better and trying to like, I feel like one thing that's big for me is like, I want to be a mentor. I feel like it's very much, it's a cycle, so like I'm being mentored by people that look like me. And then I want to like make the road better for those behind me as well. And make sure that they can not only like manage to survive, but also like thrive in these spaces that weren't created for them, but now can be theirs.
That's awesome. And I know as an undergrad, you did that with your medical mentorship program, with your involvement in the Nigerian organization on campus.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you, I guess maybe right now you're in that being mentored role, but how are you thinking about serving as a mentor for those a little bit earlier on the path?
Yeah, I mean, so still, I'm still kind of in a mentoring role. I help a few pre-med students in college right now that are looking to apply to med school and have aspirations of being doctors. So I help mentor them on the side as well. And definitely this semester, COVID pending, once things open back up, getting more involved in the Durham community, working with kids involved in STEM.
That's awesome, man. I mean, we just covered a few of your identities, but I hope the people hear just how thoughtful you are about each identity and how they've kind of shaped you and made you the person you are. And through it all, it's with a smile. It's nothing but positivity. And I think that gives you the fuel to keep on keeping on.
Mm-hmm.
In another transition, I like to end with these rapid fire questions. They by no means need to be rapid fire answers, but they don't really fit in with the rest of the flow of the conversation. So you mentioned you're an early riser, you always have been. Do you have a morning routine or nighttime routine?
Yeah, so morning routine, wake up, I make my bed. That's
what time do you wake up?
I'm talking either 6 or 6:30. So I'll wake up then. I will make my bed. That's the one thing that I didn't do when I was in college. And I feel like that reflects how like I was in college. But like now that I'm like a full adult, I feel like I definitely need to make my bed. So I like making my bed because it's one thing that I can say like I've accomplished early on. So like that kind of sets the tone for the day. And honestly, like when things are disorganized, I feel like that like reflects my mental like well-being. Like if my desk is disorganized, that I'm going through something.
Absolutely.
Right. So I try to keep things super neat, super clean. I'm not like a neat freak or anything, but I like organization. So that's part of my morning routine. I have my tea. Before I have my tea though, I like plank. So I'll do like 4 minutes of planking just to get that core right.
Is that right? Okay. So you're 6:30, you're up, bed is made, you're hitting the ground, planks, or while your tea. What type of tea do you drink?
Yes.
So I just got into the tea game this semester, so I'm all ears here.
It's the way to go. But I keep it simple. I'm a simple guy, man. So it's some green tea and then with 2 teaspoons of honey, and that gets me going,
Got you. Okay, so you're up, bed is made, you're hitting the plank.
And the plank's a little rolling action too on the back, got to keep the joints feeling good.
Yep. Okay. Tea is being brewed. Keep going. Sorry to keep interjecting.
You're good. And then, get my tea, and then I start studying. Actually, no, important. I left this out. This is one thing I need to improve on for the new year, is being more consistent with this. But before I start studying, I have you remember this?
Of course.
Showing him our little like Harvard,
and I'm also showing
moleskin.
Right back at you.
Yeah, the Harvard moleskin. So it's pretty much just like a small little notebook, and I made this goal that I wanted to journal every day in Spanish, might I add, because I'm trying to like improve my Spanish. So I just
this is good.
do it in Spanish. So so I try to do that every morning before I start doing anything. Before I was like, let me just do it sometime during the day. But if I don't do it right in the beginning of the day, then like, I might just not get around to it. So when times have gotten stressful, I've let that slide a little bit. I'll go for like periods when I don't do it, but definitely this upcoming year, I want to be very consistent and just like making sure I do that every morning, regardless of the situation, just like getting that done first. So I do that. And then I tap into my work. I'll like look at my list that I made for the day, or like maybe add some stuff to the list.
Do you make that list the night before?
Yeah, so I try to make my list the night before,
And maybe
so
we'll
that I
get
can
into
kind
the
of,
nighttime routine. Keep going with
yeah,
this morning.
yeah, yeah. So then and then after that, that's like when I really start my day, and I use this thing called Anki. It's like it's a flashcard app pretty much, and it does like spaced repetition.
Oh, okay.
Any med school students understand what I'm
I've
talking about if they're
heard
listening to
a med
this.
school student pub this. Keep going. And
Yeah,
can you
so
spell that for us? It's a weird
Anki
spelling.
is Anki.
Gotcha.
Anki. And really who put me onto this is Prerak Juthani.
Shout
I
out.
believe shout out to Prerak. I believe he's a third year medical student over at Yale. And I actually connected with him recently, but before that, I kind of just watched his YouTube videos, and he put me onto Anki way back when. So I've kind of just stuck with that like whole studying method from the very beginning of med school. And it's nice because you wake up and like your flashcards are ready to like do, and you don't really have to think about it that much. It's just like, okay, I'm learning and I'm just going to do them, and
Right.
it's going to pay off later. So I do that, and then kind of just roll with the rest of my day from there.
And what time about would you say this whole routine takes?
I mean, like up until Anki, I would say that takes me about like 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then my Anki, depending on how many cards are loaded up for the day, that could take me anywhere between like 1 to like 2.5 hours. It depends.
Oh, is that right?
No, because there's a lot of cards. They kind of accumulate, and then you just kind of like do them. So it depends on the load. But
Gotcha.
so that
And okay, 2 questions. When are you eating breakfast, if at all?
okay. So usually I will have like a snack. I'll have like a granola bar. I usually have like one of those like Kodiak cake little
Delicious.
granola bars. Really
Delicious.
good, protein packed. Or a Nutri-Grain bar. I'll have one of those with my tea. If I'm particularly hungry after I finish my Anki, then I'll make some breakfast, usually like an omelet or like maybe 2 eggs, something good. But otherwise, if I'm busy, then I'll just kind of keep it moving. Maybe have a little yogurt, and then like have my breakfast or brunch
Right.
like at noon.
Gotcha. And then one question on your journaling. So it's in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
What are you journaling about? Do you have prompts you like to answer? Are you setting an intention for the day? Or are you just kind of talking about more like a diary style, writing down your worries?
Yeah, I would say it's more diary style. It's kind of like stream of consciousness. Whatever I'm like really thinking about, I'm trying to just capture that in my journal. I haven't yet, but I'd love to like go back and like kind of see like where my head was at.
Yeah.
Way back when.
I've done that. I'm lucky. I've had a fairly, I'd say, consistent journaling habit since sophomore year, and it's awesome to go back. And I don't do it often, but if you want to look back and see, oh, how was I feeling that day when we won the Ivy championship, or how did I think about this issue? It's nice. And so, do you have a nighttime routine, if at all?
So it depends. If I'm just grinding, it's really like finish the grind,
hit the sack,
hit the sack, and then restart. I'd say I definitely have more of a morning routine than a nighttime routine.
Gotcha.
I had a book, Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States,
right?
And I started tapping into that. I need to be better about reading, but I was like, I'm going to like read 10 pages a night before I go to sleep. I did it for like a hot 3 days, and then I tapped out. But I'm going to try to be better about that. I'm going to be intentional about that next semester. But
love that. And next question, unfortunately, like we said at the top, it's been too long since we've been together. What new belief, behavior, or habit, maybe in the past 2 years since we've been in school together, has most improved your life?
That's a good question. I would say it's kind of less of like a tangible thing I've done, but kind of like more of a mindset. It's like the mindset that I kind of like want to improve myself like every day. You know, I kind of want to learn something new.
Sure.
Okay, being in med school makes it easy to learn something new every day, but I always will kind of want to grow every day. I feel like there are times when I was at Harvard where I was kind of just going through the motions, doing things. not really asking myself why I'm doing things, but just being like, okay, this is what I have to do.
Yep.
And not really seeing much meaning to it. But now, like, I feel like with everything that I want to like spend my time doing, it's got to be meaningful and it's got to help me in some certain way. And I have to like think about like, what am I getting from this? And am I putting in the work to get that out from it?
So it's really intentional. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That resonates with me, especially on those days where, especially this semester, school teachers like to give just a lot of busy work. They felt like they wanted to be engaging, but there'd be times like, why am I doing this? And if you don't have that vision of the future, it can get hard to stay on the path. And I like that idea of, at the end of the day, being able to say, you know what, I'm a little bit better. I'm a little bit better than I woke up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome that's more in your awareness. I think I'm going to reflect on that, maybe hit the journal, see how I feel about that, because when there's just so many things to do, you can feel productive and you feel like you're getting better, but are you asking the hard question? Like, are you really?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And in your very diverse life that covers every and all area of interests, if you had to give, say, a TED Talk or speech on something, what would it be on?
That's a fun question. I would probably, it could be one of either two things. One thing that I would want to like attend a TED Talk on right now is like leadership, because I feel like there are always ample opportunities like every day to like work on your leadership. And I'm doing this thing over at school right now. It's called like the lead curriculum. So they pair us up with one of the faculty and we have like a small group and we just talk about like leadership from time to time. And it's not really super stressed in like the medical school curriculum leadership, but it's very important because when you're a doctor, you're going to be leading a team, right?
Especially as a surgeon.
Especially as a surgeon, but it just in general, you're always going to be on a team. And like being a leader isn't always going to be the person that's like telling people what to do, even though it's going to be like kind of like a big part of it. But it's also like understanding your role and how like you can facilitate others, right? And my like mentor, my like leadership mentor at school, his name's Dr. Joe Doty. Shout out Dr. Joe Doty. But he put it this way: he was like, leadership is the way in which you influence others, right?
Yes.
And that could be as small as like acknowledging someone, like when you're at the supermarket, instead of just like burying your head in your phone, looking up and saying hi to someone.
Oh, no way.
You're exerting some sort of influence on that person. Like you could try it, like next time you're at the supermarket or picking up like fast food, like thanking the person and calling them by like the name on their like name tag.
Little
and
things.
You can that influences somebody, right? So there are intentional ways that you can influence others, and there's intentional ways that you can improve yourself. So like that goes even back to like journaling. Like that's one way that like one of the pillars of like emotional intelligence, EQ, it's like self-awareness. So you can kind of go about your day doing things, but are you self-aware? That's kind of like what we just touched upon, you know. It's one of the pillars, and that's the most important pillar for emotional intelligence. Like, how are you going to influence others if you are not aware of like what's going on up top? So that's the leadership spiel. But if I want to do like a fun TED Talk, then I'd probably do something on musical creation, the creative process when it comes down to making music. I'd probably like break down how me and PJ like wrote one of our songs.
And what did that look like? Were you piece of paper brainstorm? Are you just chatting? It's like, oh, this idea would be funny. Is the record button always on? What did that look like?
It's honestly, the best songs we make are just vibes. Like they're just vibes from the very beginning.
Yes.
When we're struggling to find words, there's a problem. When it kind of just comes out, you don't even have to really have the words, but if you have the vibe, you have like the cadence.
Yes.
You know, like what, you know how you want to say something. You might not know what you want to say, but you know how you want to say, and you can feel it. Then you know you've got something good, right? And it's immediate. Like it comes down to like when you're like finding the beat, you can hear a beat and you're like, I know exactly what I want to do on this beat right now.
No
and
way.
like our best songs, like we made them quickly, like within a night, like within 2 hours, we'll have like pretty much everything like wrapped up and ready to go.
No
and
way.
That's, yeah.
So how would you go about teaching that? Or would it be teaching maybe a tangential skill like resilience, or being okay with not every song being great, kind of being all right with putting out bad ideas, because, you know, after 99 bad ones, there's going to be a gem. How would you tackle that?
I mean, you got to come at things like the same energy. Like, it's not a guarantee it's going to be hit every time, but like if you put out that energy, like you'll find something and someone's going to like it. But then just tapping into that like creation, you know, just kind of using like your background, using like what you do well and like what you want to improve on, like trying to put that into music. It's kind of hard to describe, but it comes down to a vibe. I love using the word vibe, but It really is. It's something you just feel, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you necessarily can even teach it, but it's just something you feel and just rock with, and it's a beautiful thing.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question. Dang, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a dead end. So you went off. So I appreciate you.
Hey man, I always got something to say.
Always. Maybe we will wrap up with a quote or mantra that you live by or you think of often.
Man, I think we covered this base pretty well today. It's definitely has to be life is a battle. I mean, recently I changed my like little Instagram little blurb to life is a battle.
Okay.
Because it really is. And we're always battling something. There's always going to be another. Once we conquer something, there's always going to be another obstacle to face. And if there isn't, then you need to find another obstacle to conquer, because then life would be boring if there wasn't adversity, you know. That makes the process of life more meaningful, you know.
And that's how you grow.
Back. Yeah, that's how you grow. Yeah, if you're not putting yourselves in positions like to possibly fail, then like you're not living, you know. Yeah, life is a battle. That's the mantra. That is the mantra.
I love it. And what you said at the end, if you're not putting yourself in a position to fail, you're not living.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that one to heart as somebody who tries to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of value in keeping that in the back of your mind. You know, like,
yeah,
hey man, you gotta risk it in order to have those growth moments. So man, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing all of your stories and your wisdom throughout. I so appreciate you for hopping on in your short winter break. So all I can say is thank you. This has been an absolute blast for me.
I'd love this, man. This is my first and best podcast that I've been on, man. So I'd love to be back. I'd love to be back sometime. But
absolutely.
It was great chopping it up.
We can totally run around too. So you're invited anytime you'd like to hop on.
Sweet, man.
All right.
Well, thank you for having me, man.
Thank you. All right.
See ya.